Jack Blackburn was one of the sharpest minds boxing ever saw. A fighter, a teacher, a man who knew the game inside out, upside down, and sideways. The man behind the champ. Joe Louis and Jack Blackburn. Not just a trainer and a fighter. Not just a teacher and a student. It ran deeper than that. Blackburn wasn't just the man in the corner. He was the guardian angel, the voice in his ear, the steady hand that built him into a machine. He didn't just train a champion. He made one. And through it all, they called each other the same name. He was born Charles Henry Blackburn on May 20th, 1883, in Versailles, Kentucky. His father, a minister, a man of God. But Jack didn't have much use for salvation. He had fists. The family moved to Indianapolis, and young Jack did what kids did back then, hustled. Selling newspapers, scraping together change, keeping his eyes open for something bigger than the next meal. He made it through high school, and then found work at a bowling alley, setting pins, inhaling dust, and watching men drink and fight. He saved just enough nickels and dimes to open a shoe shine stand. It kept him fed, kept him moving. He earned the nickname Jack the Boot Black because if he couldn't knock a man out yet, he sure as hell could make his shoes look good. But he wasn't about to waste his life kneeling in front of other men. He was 9 years old when he saw the newspaper illustration, a front-page drawing of John L. Sullivan and James J. Corbett, two giants, men who beat the hell out of each other for a living, and he knew right then, this was it. The bruises, the sweat, the fists crashing into flesh. This was better than any sermon, better than shining shoes, better than anything. By 15, he was in the gym, throwing punches, learning how to hurt a man properly. By 1899, his manager James Doherty was already calling out any lightweight in the country who had the guts to fight him. By 1903, Blackburn made enough noise to get the attention of Dick Kane, the sports editor of the Philadelphia Record, who then became his manager. His first fight under Kane earned him a payday of $7.50. Not much, but when you've been living on coffee and donuts, it's a fortune. Blackburn stayed on the East Coast, chasing fights, chasing money, chasing anything that got him out of the damn shoe-shining racket. He took on anyone, from lightweights to heavyweights, didn't matter. At 5'11" and 133 pounds, he was a tall, wiry lightweight, built like a street lamp. But he had the fists of a man who'd seen too much and smiled too little. On November 2nd, 1903, he stepped into the ring against Joe Gans, the lightweight champion of the world. No title was on the line, but that didn't matter. Blackburn beat him. 6 rounds, tight fight, but the newspapers gave it to Jack. 5 months later, they ran it back in Baltimore, Gans' own backyard. That one went to Gans, but Blackburn wasn't buying it. Called it a robbery, a fix, a hometown screwjob, and maybe it was. But Gans, he never gave him a title shot, wouldn't risk it, so Blackburn gave himself the crown anyway. "I'm the uncrowned lightweight champion," he said, and he wasn't wrong. It wasn't just Gans. They all avoided him no matter the weight class. Packy McFarland, Billy Papke, Frank Kloss, Battling Nelson, Stanley Ketchel, they all said the same 2 words. No thanks. Jack Blackburn was the kind of fighter you didn't fight unless you had to. In 1903, Jack Blackburn stepped into the ring with Sam Langford for the first time. The first of at least 6 fights, maybe more. Back then, records weren't worth the ink they were printed with. This one was a 12-round prearranged draw, but if you read the newspaper the next morning, they all said the same thing. Blackburn got the better of it. A year later, they met again. Another draw. Billy Rocap, one of the most respected officials in boxing, called it the greatest fight he'd ever seen. Langford himself, the man who fought everybody, feared nobody, had a different way of putting it. "I never feared Johnson, McVeigh, or Jeanette as much as I did that Philadelphia Terror," Langford said. Blackburn stole more than a few rounds from Langford. He stole his catchphrase, too. Langford came back from London calling everyone Chappie. Blackburn liked the sound of it and made it his own. Blackburn kept knocking down doors and knocking out men. He fought Mike Twin Sullivan to a draw, beat Jack Sullivan, and took down Harry Lewis in 1907, back when Lewis was the top contender for the welterweight title. That same year, Blackburn pulled off something only a madman or a legend would do. He fought 6 men in one night, 1 round apiece. 3 of them hit the canvas and stayed there. Word got around. The name Jack Blackburn carried weight. So much weight that when Booker T. Washington, the famous author and activist, visited Boston, some people mistook him for Jack Blackburn. That's the kind of fighter he was. The kind of fighter you didn't just hear about. You felt him in the air. He made the world believe a good little man could whip a good big man. He didn't just prove it. He lived it. He fought anybody, any weight, any day. The bigger they come, the harder they fall. That wasn't just some tired old line. It was Blackburn's gospel. His ace in the hole wasn't brute strength or wild haymakers. It was precision, timing, distance, feints, counters. He saw the cracks in a man's defense before the man even knew they were there. He could read a fighter's weaknesses like a cheap novel. Bad footwork, bad habits, a lazy left. Blackburn filed it all away. Built defenses, erected offenses, and built strategies that could beat damn near anyone regardless of weight. There were some folks in the early 1900s that swore Jack Blackburn beat Jack Johnson in a fight. That's not quite the truth, but it's not exactly a lie either. It was a sparring session, but not the kind where two guys take it easy and get some work in. This was personal. Blackburn, 133 pounds of pure hell, peppered Johnson, bloodied his nose, made him look like a fool. Johnson, all 203 pounds of him, got pissed. He tried to bulldoze the little man, swing him into the dirt, but he couldn't lay a glove on him. Blackburn slipped, dodged, countered. He kept making Johnson eat leather. The gym howled with laughter. Even years later, people still tease Johnson about getting worked over by a lightweight. Some say that's why Johnson never liked Joe Louis. Every time Louis got praised, some old-timer would bring up Blackburn and that day in the gym. That sparring session harassed Johnson like a bad debt. But for Blackburn, it was pure gold. His name spread like wildfire. His price tag shot up, and suddenly everybody wanted to see the man who made Jack Johnson look human. Philadelphia Jack O'Brien had 35 pounds on him, but Blackburn didn't give a damn. He fought him anyway. Got dropped, sure, but he got back up and went to work. Closed O'Brien's right eye with his loop-the-loop punch, a slick little right cross he threw while moving away from his opponent's jab. Then came November 14th, 1908, a fight people still whispered about years later. Blackburn faced Chicago's John Willie, 205 pounds, big, strong, built like a brick wall. Blackburn, 133 pounds soaking wet, a 72-pound weight difference. But weight didn't matter to Blackburn. The big white fighter never laid a glove on Blackburn, Alvin Moses wrote, who in turn jabbed, sidestepped, hooked, and right-crossed Willie at will. It wasn't a fight, it was a lesson. Willie swung at air while Jack moved like a shadow, slipping, dodging, and picking him apart like a butcher with a dull knife. A little man who fought big, and always fought smart. At the start of 1909, Blackburn was on top of the world. He expected another year of fighting, winning, and making money. Then his temper got in the way. First he got into a brawl with his own brother. Bad blood spilled, fists flew, and when words weren't enough, the brother pulled a razor. One deep slice across Blackburn's left cheek. A permanent reminder that family could cut you deeper than any opponent in the ring. A few days later, things went from bad to deadly. Blackburn and his common-law wife, Maud Pillion, drove over to the home of Alonzo and Mattie Polk. It was said there was a lot of jealousy and bad blood. Maybe it was just a bad night, but it turned ugly fast. Mattie came out swinging, smashed Maud over the head with a brick or a bottle. But Blackburn's wife wasn't one to take a beating sitting down. She pulled a knife, ready to carve Mattie open. Then Alonzo jumped in. Blackburn reached for his revolver. One shot, then another, then another. All three of them got hit. His wife took a bullet by mistake. The women survived. Alonzo didn't. The law didn't give a damn that Blackburn had fought his way through life his own way. They hit him with a manslaughter conviction and sentenced him to 15 years. Maybe the weight of it all got to him. Maybe he just wanted out. But at some point, he tried to check out early. A woman visiting him slipped him a vial of poison. He drank it. It didn't work. So he did what he had always done. He fought. Not in the ring, but in the only way he could. He started training prisoners. He became the prison's physical education instructor and even gave boxing lessons to the warden's 3 sons. And that's how he found his ticket out. Warden McKenty pulled some strings, got him a lawyer. The lawyer went to work, and soon enough, The governor of Pennsylvania signed the pardon. Before 5 years were up, Jack Blackburn was a free man, out of prison, back in the ring. That was the plan anyway. Blackburn won his first fight upon his release, a 6-round decision, but something was missing. Inactivity, age, hard living, it all caught up to him. The legs weren't there. The reflexes dulled. His punches didn't sting like they used to. He left Philadelphia looking for fresh fights, fresh starts. But the road didn't get any softer. Losses piled up. The bottle got heavier. He fought when he could, but by his mid-30s, the game had passed him by. The arthritis set in first. Then the drinking got worse. He tried managing fighters, but success was as slippery as ever. The toughest fight of his life wasn't against some contender in the ring. It was against poverty, hunger, the slow rot of being forgotten. He scraped by as a trainer. Started with Sammy Mandel, took him from a school-aged kid to the lightweight championship. He guided Bud Taylor to the bantamweight title. He trained men who could fight, men who could win. Art Lasky, Jackie Fields, Lou Tendler, Sailor Freeman, Von Perrott, Gorilla Jones, Young Gene Buffalo, and many others. But it didn't matter. No one talked about Jack Blackburn the fighter anymore. The boxing world moved on. Then in 1934, 2 men knocked on his door. John Roxborough and Julian Black. They had a kid, a heavyweight. They plucked him off an assembly line in Detroit and brought him to George Trafton's gym in Chicago. They wanted Blackburn to train him. At first, Blackburn refused. No money in it, he said. Blackburn had seen what happened to black fighters. No matter how good they were, white promoters locked them out. But they offered him $35 a week, more than he'd ever made anywhere else. More than the fights, more than the hustles, more than anything. So he took the job with a warning. You'll never make a success of this kid, but I need the job, Blackburn told him. He ain't gonna make no money worth shaking your finger at. Remember, he's a colored boy. The kid's name? Joe Louis. Blackburn didn't just train Joe Louis. He broke him down and built him back up, piece by piece, muscle by muscle, punch by punch. Louis was quiet, shy, respectful, the kind of kid who took orders without talking back. That was fine. But Blackburn didn't want a nice boy. He wanted a killer. And the first thing he made sure Louis understood, you're a black fighter, Blackburn said. Most of your opponents will be white. If you want to go anywhere, you gotta fight clean, stay out of clinches, and win so damn decisively they can't rob you. It's mighty hard for a colored boy to win decisions. The dice is loaded against you. Let your fist be the referee. Don't ever forget that. Louis listened. More importantly, he learned. Blackburn molded him into something different, something terrifying, not just a fighter, an executioner. When words weren't enough, Blackburn laced up the gloves himself and showed Louis exactly what he meant. A slip here, a counter there, the science of destruction. For 2 straight years, they were never apart. Wherever Louis went, Blackburn went too. Training, watching, drilling him into a machine. When Louis got drafted into the army, Blackburn didn't like it. Who's going to watch out for him, Blackburn asked. He wasn't just training a fighter anymore. He was protecting his son. They had a finger system, a silent language of signals, a flick, a tap, a shift. It told time for Louis, told him when to move, when to attack, when to be patient. Few people even noticed. It was as secretive as a big league catcher flashing signs to his pitcher. And just like that, Blackburn turned Joe Louis into the most dangerous man in the ring. I guess I put on more power in the last half minute of each round of my fights than I did in the 2.5 minutes that went before, Louis said. I always read his fingers. I knew where I was every second in a fight, especially outdoors where there are no time clocks. I never have looked at a time clock in all my life because Chappie's fingers were my clock hands. He had a funny way of holding up one finger when there was only a half minute to go before the end of the round. I always expected that signal. I'd be looking for it. I'd steal peeks at my corner. There would be Chappie's fingers with its funny little crook in it. That meant I was to turn on the deluge until the bell ended the round. That's why so many of them didn't finish that particular round. It was Chappie's own idea, one of the best of 1,000 fine fighting ideas he had. Blackburn never wasted words. Short, sharp, straight to the gut. No fluff, no BS. More than anything, he made sure Joe Louis never made the same mistakes that buried Jack Johnson. Blackburn called Johnson a clown, said he had talent but no discipline, that he let the world get too close, played too many games, and lost himself in the lights. Blackburn knew that road too well. He walked it himself, taken wrong turns and paid for every one of them. So he kept Louis locked in, focused, straight as an arrow. And Louis listened. More than anyone else in his camp, more than the managers, the promoters, the press, he leaned on Blackburn. But life lessons weren't a one-way street. Louis had his own lessons for Blackburn. The old man had a taste for the bottle, and Lewis hated it. Before his fight with King Levinsky in Chicago, Lewis laid down a challenge. You stop drinking for a year if I take this man out in one round. Blackburn, half smirking, agreed. Lewis didn't just beat Levinsky, he buried him. 2 minutes and change, and Levinsky was flopping like a fish on the canvas. But sober or not, Blackburn couldn't stay out of trouble. In 1935, Blackburn was in trouble again, and back in a cell. Another charge, another bullet, another body on the slab. They said he got into a brawl and fired a shot at another man. Missed. But the bullet found an old man instead. A little girl got hit too, but she lived. The old man wasn't so lucky. 3 months before Lewis was to take on Max Schmelling, Blackburn stood trial. Lewis came to the stand as a character witness. Maybe it helped, maybe it didn't, but Blackburn walked out as a free man. And outside the courtroom, Lewis kept climbing. Before his fight with Max Schmelling, Blackburn drilled one thing into Lewis's head: how to block the right hand, over and over. Circle left, chappie, Blackburn said. Keep your left high. Keep him off balance. For once, Lewis didn't listen. Schmelling's right hand landed clean, over and over, and just like that, Lewis took his first loss. I remember Chappie saying, "Don't go for the knockout yet. Keep jabbing him off balance so he can't get that right in. And for God's sake, keep your left arm high." I wish I had listened to him, Lewis said. Blackburn didn't scold him. Didn't need to. The loss did that all on its own. He just put a hand on his fighter's shoulder and said, "Well, Chappie, you just got tagged. But don't worry. You'll come around all right." And he did. It took 2 years, but Lewis did it. He wrecked Jim Braddock in Chicago, took the title, and did what Jack Johnson never could. The American public loved him. Clean cut, humble, no trouble outside the ring. That was the image. Roxborough and Black made sure of it. No women's scandals, no wild drinking, no Jack Johnson-style rebellions. Just a fighter who kept his head down and his fists up. And the wins kept coming. Title defense after title defense. A champion who never ducked a fight, never made excuses, never let the belt slip from his waist. Didn't matter what color you were. Everybody respected Joe Louis. But trouble wasn't done knocking. 1941, and Billy Conn was too damn fast. Joe couldn't touch him, couldn't reach him with his jab, couldn't land the bombs. Conn danced, darted in, piled up points, and then in the 12th round, he nailed Louis clean. Louis went stumbling back into the ropes, legs like spaghetti. He held on, barely, and that was exactly what Blackburn wanted. Blackburn knew Conn now wanted the kill, and he knew what happens to a fighter who gets greedy. "Watch him, Chappie," Jack said. "He's going to come charging. You let him. Then you bury him." Blackburn was right. Conn charged in. Louis let the right hand fly, and it was over. As Louis wiped the sweat off his face in the locker room, Blackburn clapped him on the back. "Let's get along, Chappie. You need some rest." After the close call with Conn, someone asked Blackburn if he'd ever seen a smaller man fight with that much courage and skill. "Yep," Blackburn said. "Me." Then came Buddy Bear. Louis put Bear on the floor in one round in New York, and Blackburn knew he had nothing left to teach. "Joe's done graduated his course now," Blackburn said. "Yes, sir, that boy really knows his stuff. No need to worry about the chap. He can go for himself from here on out. Just you watch." The Bear fight was the last time Jack Blackburn ever trained Joe Louis. Pneumonia took its first swing at Blackburn and knocked him down. He got back up. A month later, it hit him again. This time, he stayed down. He was 59 years old. Louis was in the Army when it happened, out on the rifle range at Camp Upton. The major walked over, told him straight. Louis staggered back, covered his face with his hand. "It was like my right arm had been shot away," Louis said. They gave him a furlough to attend the funeral, but the grief hit harder than any punch he'd ever taken. Tears ran down his face. He wiped them away, but they kept coming. He left the funeral as fast as he could. "So poor old Chappie is gone," Louis said. "I can't believe it. I can't. It won't ever wear off because I won't ever listen to another person like I did him. He wasn't just a trainer. He was my friend, my teacher, my nurse, my brother. Yeah, my father." Blackburn was the only voice Louis had ever truly trusted. "Never again will I be more than half the fighter I was," Louis said. He was right. Louis fought 9 more years after Blackburn's death. Still won, still fought well, but something was missing. The sharpness, the patience, the lessons that had been whispered between rounds. And when his comeback in 1950 rolled around, it got ugly. He was older, slower, broke, and Blackburn's voice was long gone. No one left to say, keep your hands up, chappie. No one left to say, stay off the ropes, chappie. No one left to pull him back when it was time to stop. Blackburn had been more than a trainer. He had been the thing that kept Joe Louis from going under, and without him, Louis was never the same. They were the gold standard, boxer and trainer, fighter and teacher, a kid with dynamite fists and an old man who knew exactly where to aim them. It was more than that, though. It always is. Loyalty, discipline, a father when Louis didn't have one. Every fighter needs someone in their corner, someone who knows the road, who's walked it, stumbled on it, bled on it. Blackburn had seen it all. The glory, the gutter, the grave, and he made sure Louis learned from his mistakes instead of making his own. It wasn't just about throwing the right punch at the right time. It was about guidance, survival, keeping your head down and your hands up. In the end, that's what made them great. Not just a boxer and a trainer, but a man and his chappie.